Hey y'all, today another familiar face. If you follow Philly sports in the Delaware Valley, you're familiar with the face on the screen. Or if you're listening in, you know Ed Kracz from SI with so many places. Ed, tell the people about yourself if they don't already know.
Hey Matt, how you doing? Good to be back on here with you. I'm with SI.com, Eagles Today. My website's at si.com/NFL/Eagles, and you can just hit me on Twitter at Kratze, Krazze.
So we were just talking about, and I was like, no, we just got to go ahead and get it fired up because interesting tidbit that Ed shared for me. It didn't occur to me that if Doug Peterson were to win a Super Bowl at some point, obviously coming off of the Eagles' Week 4 win over the Jaguars, but if he were to accomplish that, he'd be the first NFL coach, Ed, to win with two different teams.
As a head coach, yeah, no one's done that. Not Bill Parcells, not Bill Belichick, not Andy Reid, of course. He didn't bring one to Philadelphia. He did win one in Kansas City. So, yeah, wouldn't that be weird if it's Doug Peterson that ends up doing it? I mean, he's got a Jaguars team. And, again, Matt, we talked a little bit before we went on here about how, they're a young roster, and they've drafted very high in each round of the draft for the last several years. So, you're going to have some talent on that team. Even if you miss a few of those picks, you're still going to get some guys that can play the game. And now you have a coaching staff that knows what it's doing. Doug Peterson, obviously, Mike Caldwell, D coordinator. I think should be a head coach. Good assistants that are good teachers. And, now it's just a matter of getting some experience under their belt. But I think this Jags team, I'm not saying they're going to win the Super Bowl this year, of course.
No.
I think this Jags team, if they progress correctly and they fill in some of the holes that they have, I think defensive tackle is one of them. Who's to say Doug can't win a Super Bowl in 2 years or 3 years? I mean, he won a Super Bowl here in his second year, right? I mean, he went 7-9 his first year. Next year will be year 2 with the Jags. Maybe he does it in year 2 like he did in Philly. I mean, it's crazy when you think about it that way.
Because Trevor Lawrence is to your point, Trevor Lawrence is a superior athlete across the board from what Doug was able to do with Carson Wentz. Carson Wentz was a stud. I mean, the guy still, for all the boneheaded, awful quarterback play, the guy can still make every throw on the field. So you add, and Trevor Lawrence is also, more of a mobile threat than Carson Wentz ever was. They hit on a good free agent pickup as well with Christian Kirk. Christian Kirk has been fantastic for them, save for being on Josiah Scott Island for most of last.
Yeah, he didn't have a very big game. I know he had that big catch late, that 45-yarder that gave him that last touchdown to make it a one-score game. But he was pretty quiet in this one.
He very much, compared to what he had been doing for the rest of the year. So getting right into it, were the DBs most impressive to you, or what was most impressive to you on Sunday?
Yeah, well, I mean, individually, Hassan Reddick just took that game over in the fourth quarter. That was majorly impressive, no doubt. And just the team's ability to overcome adversity. I mean, down 14-0, the elements were horrible.
Yeah,
I know you were out of town, Matt. Probably a good thing. I don't know what the weather was like when you were where you were, but here it was just atrocious. I mean, the rain's coming down sideways, the winds are blowing 30 miles an hour. So the Eagles didn't turn the ball. Well, Hurts threw the interception, bad throw, late throw. But they didn't fumble it once. They didn't even drop it and pick it up. Well, there was a fumble, a low snap from Kelsey, but they didn't lose any fumbles. They had 50 rushes, and they didn't fumble one of them. So that's impressive. And then, you talk about the DBs. Yeah, Zach McPherson came in after 3 snaps that Darius Slay played before hurting his forearm, and he did pretty good. Of course, it helps when you have a pass rush, right? And the Eagles were generating pressure on Lawrence. But McPherson, you didn't hear him get beat much.
No.
Josiah Scott comes in. He kind of holds his own. He got beat a couple times by the tight end. Dan Arnold picked up a good chunk of yards on one march that the Jags had, but he did pretty good. I mean, he did as well as you can expect.
Right. Absolutely.
In that situation.
Yeah.
So I was impressed with the DBs, no doubt. But listen, Bradbury was still out there, and what a
Oof.
pickup he's been. My goodness, that interception to me that he had in the red zone when the Jaguars are marching down 6, end of the late in the third quarter, looking to take the lead, and he steps in front of a pass that Christian Kirk dives actually in front of the pass and makes a great pick. I mean, he's had 2 picks this year, and both have been game changers, and that was a huge play. So it's good to see when your number one quarterback goes out, Darius Slay. You still have a number one cornerback in the game with James Bradbury because they're both number one cornerbacks.
I've called it in conversation. That's a film study interception. I mean, you could just tell he totally read it and just was sold out, like you said. I mean, the feeling that you can go and dive for that interception, you're only doing that if you know that you're seeing it. And he saw it, and it was at a crucial moment where they couldn't have had that. I mean, the Jags had every chance.
I talked to him after the game, and he said his number one responsibility was whoever it was, I can't remember, ran a post pattern.
Yep.
And he said you don't see a whole lot of post patterns in the red zone. So he kind of just played between that guy and Christian Kirk, kind of in space, like a zone. And he just looked at Trevor Lawrence. And all Lawrence was doing was looking at Christian Kirk. He wasn't looking at the guy running the post. So Bradbury, being a veteran's like, he's going to throw to this guy. So when he saw him wind up and released the ball, he was in a full sprint and dove to make that catch. But he saw it, he read it perfectly. So kudos to him, man. That's a veteran making a play right there. And this guy has been just a terrific pickup for the Eagles.
So you're obviously, as they say, an OG of the Philly sports coverage, and so the Eagles are now 4-0 for the first time since 2004. In large, in large strokes, how does this team compare to that one? At least at this point, a quarter way through the season.
Yeah, I was kind of like the second guy, the third guy really covering the Eagles. They kind of dusted me off for the playoffs, covered a few training camp practices. So I was at the Super Bowl that year. I mean, that team, gosh, they had the secondary, I think, like the Eagles had. They didn't have Brian Dawkins on this team. So, right there, it's probably advantage 04 team. The 04 team's better, I would say, compared to this team. That doesn't take away anything that the Eagles are doing this year, but the 04 team was better, I'd have to say. They had T.O., which is like A.J. Brown.
But better.
but A.J. Brown, man, he's really good.
He is.
Yeah, but I would just say the 04 team's better. And, I can't remember all the names and stuff. Really pushing my memory buttons there.
But you just felt more confident about that team just throughout.
I think so. Yeah, I do. I think they were just a better team. And listen, maybe the Eagles will become a better team as the season goes on. We're only, like you say, at the quarter pole. Yep. Not quite the quarter pole. I'm not real good with fractions, but it's a little less than a quarter because there's
at the end of the first quarter, I think, something like that.
Yeah. Well, there's 17 games, so it's like 3.98 pole.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, and that's not and it's not always the best team that at the end of the year is holding up the Lombardi. It's the team that strings together the best performances, because there were points of that 17 team where that wasn't the best team in the league, like during that Raiders game and others.
Yeah. I mean, you need to get a little lucky too. You have to kind of have things go your way. Like when you think about that Eagles championship in 2017, the ball caroms off of
Aguilar.
Well, no, Keanu Neal for the Atlanta Falcons in the divisional round.
Yes.
It hits off of his knee, and I think it was Torrey Smith is right there to catch it and advance it to like the 50. The Eagles complete a pass, and then they kick a field goal at the end of the half. And, that's a huge play, but it was a lucky bounce that allowed that to happen. So you need the ball to go your way. You need things to happen. You need to be healthy, playing good football at the right time. So there are a lot of factors that go into winning a Super Bowl when all's said and done.
Yeah, and so for the listeners, that's not a bad thing. If Ed's saying that's a team, by the way, that was going on to its 4th NFC Championship in a row, so that's not a diss to this team at all. to not be as good quite yet as the '04 team with the team's best quarterback of all time, wide receiver, a top 5 wide receiver in NFL history, Brian Dawkins. No
Yeah,
offense.
yeah, Hall of Fame safety. I mean, doesn't get any better than that. And that cornerback group, Bobby Taylor, Lito Shepard, Sheldon Brown, that was a good group. And I like this group, Bradbury, Slay, and Maddox. Um, and again, I don't know, maybe this year's group of corners is better. I don't. Lito and Bobby Taylor were really good though, and so was Sheldon Brown. So and Brown was a safety. I think the slot was Jocilio Hansen on that '04 team. So I don't know. Maddox might be a little better than him, but I just think pound for pound, that '04 team was better.
At the top, especially if you don't get into depth and things like that.
Yeah,
absolutely. Because when you get to second wide receiver, it's clearly this Eagles team. Second, third, fourth, fifth.
Yeah, yeah, right. It's just so hard to compare
Absolutely.
teams. From that was how many years ago? '04, 19 years ago, 18 years ago.
Yep.
Games changed, a lot of different rules. I mean, all that stuff.
So a lot of team for this year, comparing them to the other teams this year, they're getting to the top of the power rankings. But and power rankings aside, or you bring it in if you feel. But who do you think is the biggest threat to the Eagles out of the NFC?
Well, the entire conference.
Yeah.
Oh man, you still got to. I'm not a big fan of the Packers just because of the receiving core, but I think they'll get better. Rodgers in that young group with Christian Watkins, the rookie, or Watson, I think his name is. I just think they'll get better chemistry as the year goes on. Their defense is pretty good. Tampa Bay, boy, they look good. And the Niners on Monday night, their defense looks terrific under D'Amico Ryans, the defensive coordinator, former linebacker here with the Eagles. Great guy, doing a great job with that defense. So, maybe the Niners, the Bucks, the Packers, maybe the Cowboys. I mean, the Cowboys defense is pretty good too. I know Eagles fans aren't going to want to hear that. We all wrote the Cowboys off when Dak
3-1.
3-1. Their defense is good. Micah Parsons is a handful. So, if you're looking for kind of maybe a kind of a dark horse, if you will, maybe the Cowboys can be a threat to the Eagles. I mean, we're so far away from the finish line at this point that, so much can happen. But, I would say the old stalwarts, Brady and Rodgers, Niners defense, Cowboys maybe. Am I missing anybody? Rams? I mean, the Rams are the
afterthought.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard, though, when you win a Super Bowl to come back and do it again. I mean, there's a reason that no team has done it in this century other than the Patriots because it's just hard to do. It's hard to recapture that intensity, that focus, that hunger. So it's not to say they can't. They have a good enough roster to do it, but, there's those outlying factors of what I just mentioned that could impact them and, stop them short of going back to the Super Bowl. So, yeah, but you got to put the Rams in the mix, I guess. I mean, because they've done it. They've been there. They were there last year.
I just don't like what I'm seeing from the offense. Offense has been dynamic the entire time McVay's been there, and then this year I feel like they go through these scoring droughts, and I haven't seen that from the Rams. And so if they don't have that kind of offense that can always pop, then I don't. Their team is built to play with a lead, to make you have to throw against Ramsey, have Von Miller rushing against you, Aaron Donald pinning his ears back.
Yeah,
to have to play these tight games and you're trying to hammer the ball with Cam Akers and Henderson. I don't think that suits them well. So I'm not personally, if you're asking me, I most fear the 49ers. I think the 49ers can come out on any Sunday and beat any team in the conference. I would say the conference.
Yeah, I would probably agree with you. I think the 49ers are tough. I mean, Jimmy Garoppolo he hasn't gotten over that hump yet as the quarterback, but who's to say he doesn't get there this year? Kyle Shanahan's a very good coach, very good play designer, and now their defense is chipping in. I mean, yeah, you're right. They're going to be tough to knock out in the playoffs. They went into Green Bay, I think, last year and won that game. So
yeah, they did.
Their special teams are usually pretty solid. So, yeah, 49ers right now. But listen, ask me next month, and it might be, who knows at that point, right?
That's right, because we're at the 3-point, like you said, 3.89 or whatever it is, by
Yeah.
the end of the first quarter of the next game, then we'll be at the quarter pole of the
Yeah.
season.
Yeah, maybe somebody out there listening is better with math than we are and can
Yeah,
set us
I'm
straight on
sure.
what the fraction would be. I mean, but yeah, it's a weird thing with 17 games. It's not quite the quarter pole yet, but I guess we can call it the quarter pole. So
through whatever we're at here, Miles Sanders also has looked really good. He's looked kind of, I put it out there, and I hope it's a self-fulfilling kind of thing, but he looks Shady McCoy-ish. Do you think that he's really at moments, for the listeners, he's not Shady McCoy, that I don't know when that happens again, but he has looked very good this year. Do you think he's auditioning for another team and this is just the last time we'll get to see him in the Eagles jersey, or will he really possibly be back?
Yeah, I mean, listen, he is healthy, right? That's a good thing here at the quarter pole. Is he still good to go? He only played 12 games the last 2 years each season, so it's always been a knock is let him stay healthy, and he really put in a lot of work in the off season to have a good year, and then kind of got a little sidetracked with the hamstring injury in training camp. But he's come out, and I know he was listed on the injury report last Wednesday with a hip, but then he was a full go on Thursday and Friday. But if he can kind of work his way through some of these little injuries that seem to nag at him, at least the last 2 years, and keep putting up these kind of numbers, then yeah, he'll get a second contract somewhere for sure. Even if he plays 15 years, he'll get a second. To me, he's one of the more underrated backs in the league, and even in this city. People aren't really sold on Miles Sanders. Career high 134 yards, career high 27 rushes against the Jags. I mean, huge day. And the biggest part of that day was he didn't fumble. And, the ball was soaked and he held on to it. So listen, will he come back to Philly? I mean, the Eagles they don't pay, second contract running backs probably what they want. So the question is, would Sanders want to come back knowing that he's going to be playing behind an offensive line that is one of the best in the league? I mean, even when Jason Kelce retires, probably at the end of this year, you have Cam Jurgens stepping in, who looks solid. I guess you'll still have Lane Johnson back, and you're probably going to draft another right tackle or another tackle in this draft early because Johnson's 32 years old. So you're looking at Jeff Stoutland, one of the best line coaches. He has these guys ready no matter what their names are. So if you're Sanders, you're thinking, well, am I going to go to another team? And yeah, maybe I'll get $4 million more a year. And that's a lot.
Yeah.
But hey, do I want to play behind the best offensive line and build up some numbers and get in the conversation of maybe being a Hall of Fame guy or, a Ring of Honor guy?
Yeah.
Then he's going to have to balance that out because I just don't think the Eagles are probably going to pay him what he would probably get somewhere else. And again, saying that here early October. Could change.
Good teams don't do that. You look at the way people are building their franchises, and you look at the teams that are paying these top running backs. They're not the teams that are drafting late in the first round. Derek, if he was Derrick Henry and had just dominated from the beginning of his career, that's one thing. But I hope he does. I hope he does do what you would.
Yeah, me too. My dog's really growling at me here. I hope you don't hear that. I mean,
oh no, it's all good.
Yeah, he wants water, so hopefully someone comes in and helps him out. Yeah, okay. So yeah, all right, he's gone. It's good. It's all good now. Sorry if you heard that, but
no worries. It's the authentic recording. The new age of things. How we do these.
Yeah.
So Marcus Epps, who I wrote about before the season, I thought he would be the X factor. And it's kind of good when you don't hear about safeties, but I think he's played legitimately good. Like for the film study guys, Marcus Epps seems to be exactly. I mean, there's a reason why they're not the pass rush is getting the time to get there, and the corners are making plays because the safeties are doing what they need to do. Gardner Johnson and Epps. They're both on the last year of their deals, though. Do you think they'll both be back? Is how we going to be able to? Because we've got. I looked it up. There's like a couple over a dozen, maybe 18 guys
Yeah,
on the last year of their deal
I think
here.
that's right. I think that is right. 18.
That's just an eye-popping number. I mean, generally with roster construction, you don't have that many guys. Are are both of
Right.
the safeties there? Or
Well, yeah, you're going to have some hard decisions to make, and then you factor in that Jalen Hurts is, he's probably going to get a contract extension in March, and that's going to eat up a lot of money. So, I would think that Epps and Chauncey Gardner Johnson would be priorities. Um, I mean, I think Gardner Johnson's expecting a contract. He pretty much said as much after he got traded that he thinks he'll get one. Um, Epps, I mean, yeah, young guy. He's played every single snap this year. Hasn't been, a weak link by any means.
nope.
So yeah, he's a guy that you'd probably like to bring back too because he's a young guy. These are the guys you want to give second contracts to is productive first year contract guys that are 25 or 6 now, heading into that second contract. I would think that, yeah, they would be two priorities. And then you look at James Bradbury, he might be by the wayside. Darius Slay,
Right.
he's getting big money. I mean, he's still signed, but he's his salary cap charge is humongous. So, there's going to be a lot of decisions that need to be made. I would think Epps and CJ would be two of the guys that, yeah, they would try very hard to bring back.
Yeah, Howie did get compensation in the deal for Gardner Johnson. Basically, the compensation's swapped out for what you did for Rigger. You didn't have to do too much, but he is a good asset. If you don't want to bring him on board and then have to let him go for nothing, because that's what's going to happen unless they ship him out of town by week 8, which would be extremely odd.
Oh no, they won't trade Chauncey
Yeah.
Gardner or Marcus Epps. I mean, they're in it to win it this year, and that's why they have so many one-year contracts. Is to try to win it all, take advantage of Jalen Hurts' cheap salary, because he's going to need some big money next year, and that's going to impact what you're able to do. But you're going to have some guys that are going to take like Fletcher Cox. He's having a great year so far, but $14 million in his final year of his contract. Are they going to bring him back at that number? The salary cap does go up, though. It's supposed to rise from, I think it's 208 now to like 232 or something like that. So that will definitely help.
It helps.
But yeah, you got to prioritize who you want among these one-year contract guys. And I would guess Epps and Chauncey Gardner should be the two of them. TJ Edwards should probably be another one.
Oh, yeah.
James Bradbury, to me, I mean, I know he's 29, but boy, he's playing really well. Maybe he would be a guy. Kaiser White. See, the problem there is, Matt, is you have two linebackers, Edwards and White, on their last years of their deals, and you have Nakobe Dean, who they drafted in the 3rd round. Didn't even know he was going to be there. So they signed, they built their linebacker room thinking there's no way we're getting Nakobe Dean. But they took him in the 3rd round because it was great value.
Yep.
Now you have him sitting there. He's not getting any snaps. A young guy who will now go on to his second contract as a rookie, you're going to want to play him. So one of those guys, White and Edwards, I don't think we're coming back. And right now it's probably going to be White, but who's to say? And who's to say that's the direction they'll go? But, Dean's going to need to play. And it's probably going to come at the cost of one of those linebackers. So
TJ Edwards has played so well this season, though. Thank you for bringing him up.
He's all over the place, man. And he knows how to read off. He can dissect things well. He's a good leader. He knows the defenses. But Kaiser White's very good too. So it's going to be a tough call there as to which one you're going to keep. And I doubt they keep both. Maybe they do. But again, Dean is here. Dean's not playing, and you want Dean to play because he's cheap. His contract, he's still on his rookie contract as a 3rd round pick. So, that's the kind of labor you want, is cheap, inexpensive labor while they're young on those first contracts. So
that's right.
Got to take advantage of that.
That's the formula for a Super Bowl for fans who think that we're being cynical here. That's the formula. The dollars have to add up because you want to expend on at other positions, places that you need to in a pinch be able to go and grab another. Right. I don't know. You want to see another good pass catching tight end that costs money. You don't spend that money. You have a cheaper Marcus Epps. You have a Nakobe Dean instead of a TJ Edwards or something like that. So
yeah, exactly. And you look at the pass rushers. Hassan Reddick signed for 2 more years. You probably, Josh Sweat's locked up. I mean, you're probably going to have to go get a younger pass rusher too. Brandon Graham, I would say, is probably in his last year. That's going to free up some money. So, yeah, I mean, these are all, pieces to a really complex puzzle that Howie Roseman's going to have to sit down and figure out. And I'm sure he's already looked at all this stuff. When he makes decisions this year, he's looking at next year and the year after. He's playing chess, and we're, a lot of us aren't doing that. So, I'm sure he's got all this, kind of thought out in his mind, and will proceed as he feels best.
Absolutely. Well, I'll ask you one more of those kind of guys. Fletcher Cox. Fletcher Cox has played very well. Another guy that I wouldn't say I didn't trash his career. I mean, he's been a great player. I didn't say that he's bad player, but he hasn't looked like this Fletcher Cox in a couple of years. And from what I'm seeing, do you think that he could be back, or is he again auditioning for?
I don't. Boy, I don't know, man. That's a lot of pressure on me to answer that question. If I had to sit here right now, I would say he's probably not back. You have Jordan Davis, who will be in his second year. You have Milton Williams. I know they like this kid Marvin Jones, who's on the practice squad. Marvin Wilson, I think his name is. They might draft another guy, but yeah, I just don't. I mean, unless he wants to come back at like 10 million per year. I mean, he's making 14. I don't know whether other teams would pay him.
Not that. I can't.
I would try to bring him back. I mean, he's one of those guys that you don't want to,
yes,
get these sentimental attachments to these guys.
Yes.
But at the same time, you'd like to see them, stay your whole career as an Eagle, like Brent Selleck did.
Yep.
Like get drafted like Jason Kelsey will probably do. And then spend, 12, 13 years of your career in Philadelphia with the Eagles and then retire as an Eagle. I mean, that's kind of how I would view Fletcher Cox, and I would do my best to bring him back, but it has to be at a monetary value that you would assign to him.
Absolutely. And I think that's they've done this so well. They're drafting these guys a year before they need them, so they can learn from some of these generational guys.
Exactly.
It's awesome what Howie, great salute to you, sir.
Yeah. He they draft like Dallas Goedert, and they picked him in 2018. They had Zach Ertz. I think he came off the Super Bowl year. They took him in 2018, but that's right. Guys didn't need a tight end. They took Andre Dillard. They had that Jason Peters sitting there. That's right. They don't always draft for a guy that's going to step in right away. Jordan Davis. They got Fletcher Cox. They have Javon Hargrave. They didn't need him to come in and play 50 snaps a game. And it's just kind of like you say, you just keep playing it forward. If you're these older guys, bringing in the younger guys, if you have the right guys that aren't, threatened by these new guys coming in, they're passing that knowledge along to the younger guys before they go on their way. And these younger guys are soaking that up, and then they become the older guys and in turn pass that down to the next wave.
It's how you build a franchise, folks.
Yep.
Currently, speaking of, they have a franchise that tracking this for the people who are listening. They currently have the 3rd overall pick and the 32nd overall pick. That would, of course, mean that they won the Super Bowl if they got the 32nd. But the number 3, that's just fascinating to watch. Do you expect that the Saints will continue to play at this clip and keep the Eagles in the top 10?
There was a lot of love for the Saints nationally coming into the year. I wasn't really sold. I mean, I'm not a big Jameis Winston guy.
Right.
Dennis Allen's in his first year as a head coach. I know they were getting Michael Thomas back. And listen, Chris Olave, he could be the rookie of the year. He's having a tremendous season. Alvin Kamara is a good running back. He's been banged up, and their defense is good. But it starts for me with the quarterback, and I wasn't a big Winston guy. So, I thought the Saints would be like an 8-9 type team, right around 500, and the Eagles would probably pick 15th.
Yep.
With the Saints pick, and it could still be that. I mean, I know they're 1-3, and it's a 3rd pick right now, and that's exciting, and it's awesome. But 3 more months, to get 5-6 more wins, and I think they will. I mean, I
Yep.
think it's gonna, but when all is said and done, I think it's gonna be a pick that's like 14-18, 14-19, somewhere in that range. So
You
I
need
hate,
a win every 3 weeks, basically.
yeah, I suppose, yeah, but I don't want to play wet blanket here with the fans who were pumped for the the third overall pick here in October 5th or whatever we're at here, 4th. I just think that let's see how it plays out. And I think they'll win 6, 7, 8, 9 games. Maybe they'll be around 500. And so that pick will be a middle of the pack pick.
And that's okay. I mean,
Yeah.
that's where the Eagles picked this year. And they, of course, they didn't have the 32nd, but of course, I think
That's another thing. Yeah. We'll see.
we'll see. We'll see. Um, so speaking of Eagles draft stock, obviously we spent a lot to get to Carson Wentz a few years back, and now people are talking about in the nation's capital playing Taylor Heineke. Do you think that Carson holds on and keeps that job for a few more weeks, or is he really on the hot seat and possibly towards the portion of his career where he's a backup?
Well, I mean, listen, he held the ball too long and the Eagles sacked him 9 times. And now you have the Cowboys that came in last week and you think, oh my goodness, he's going to get sacked another 9 times. But they designed a game plan that had Carson try to get the ball out quicker. And he did, but his air yards per attempt were like 4.2, which is crazy low. So listen, if you're not going to operate an offense getting the ball out quick and you can't operate it by holding it on too long, then what good are you, frankly, bluntly? So he may hang on for a couple weeks, but by the time the Commanders come to Philly on November 14th on a Monday night game, I'm sure the network hopes he's the quarterback so they can see the return of Carson Wentz, but I have my doubts. And will it be Taylor Heineke or will it be Sam Howell? In my opinion, Sam Howell was listen. It wasn't a great quarterback group. It wasn't perceived to be a great quarterback draft. But my favorite quarterback in this draft was Sam Howell from North Carolina. I really like the kid, and
Okay.
maybe you turn to him. I mean, you know what
Wow.
Heineke is,
You
and if
do.
you're right off the season, if you're sitting there with 2 or 3 wins and before Thanksgiving, then what's the harm? You drafted him in what, the 4th or 5th round, Hal? You
Wow.
may as well throw him out there and see what you got. I mean, you know what you have in Heineke. You're not trying to really win games at that point. So let's give Sam Howell a try. I really liked him. I thought Sam Howell was a really, really good quarterback for the time he spent at North Carolina. So I wouldn't say Heineke. I would go Howell before I went Heineke.
Because you know exactly, and legit. I think you make a good point because if you're going to go to Heineke, that's just. I think going to Heineke is more of an indictment of Carson Wentz. You're saying Carson Wentz does not give you a chance to win at all, versus Hal is like turning the page, looking for the next thing.
Yeah, to see what you have because you may be picking in the top 10 and it's a good quarterback class. But if Hal comes in and shows you something, then maybe you can go spend it and cover some of those other gaping holes that the Commanders have on that roster. Offensive line, for one. But yeah, I think Hal would have a better shot. Who knows? But I don't think Wentz will be the starting quarterback by Thanksgiving.
Ooh. Well, what about you think Trubisky gets his job back in Pittsburgh
Nope,
or
nope, 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 nope. Kenny Pickett time in Pittsburgh. They're a 14-point underdog against Buffalo this week. That's crazy.
where are what do you think of that line? Do you think that the Bills are going to beat them by at least that much?
Man, it's hard to beat anybody in the league by that much. I mean, I know it's done and stuff, but I wouldn't. I listen. I'm not a betting man, to be honest.
Yeah,
So I don't know what I would do. I guess that that's a tough spot. Pickett's going to start, and that's one of the better defenses in the league that he's going to go up against. But he'll have the advantage of preparing all week as the starter. He'll take all the reps. Unlike last week when he was put into the game in relief of Trubisky, he kind of came in. I know that he says I prepare like a starter every game. Yeah, it's well and good, but you're not getting the snaps like a starter.
that's right.
So that'll be helpful for him. So, maybe I would take the Steelers and the points in that game. Buffalo hasn't, I know they played some tough games and some tough teams, but they barely beat the Ravens last week. I think the week before they had a pretty tough game too, close game. So, um, yeah, I don't know. I would probably take this. I mean, listen, don't bet the house on what I'm saying with it's, but I would take the Steelers with the 14 points. But
Yeah, I think that's a
it's
lot of
gonna be
points.
Kenny Pickett's show.
I think it's a lot. It's a lot. That's a lot of points. The Steelers are a prideful team,
Yep, right.
and Tomlin's going to prepare, especially because Tomlin had to eat his words this last week because he came out and had been so I feel like over the top in support of Trubisky to the point where it was obvious to me that it was like a win one for the Gipper kind of moment.
Yeah, and it backfired big time, right? So yeah.
It's like, Mitch, I'm trying to stand up for you. Don't make me look
Yeah.
crazy.
Well, it's funny because I wrote a story on Jalen Hurts, and I looked at teams that passed on Jalen Hurts because Howie gets a lot of grief over passing on DK Metcalf and Justin Jefferson. But there are teams that could have taken Jalen Hurts and developed him over the course of a year or two, like the Steelers, who knew Ben
True.
Roethlisberger was at the end of the line. If you take him instead of Chase Claypool at 49, you let him learn behind Roethlisberger for a year or two, and now he's ready to hit the ground running and keep this team going.
That's a
You
good
know,
point.
there were a couple other teams like the Falcons. They're taking a defensive end I've never heard of. But the article's on my site, probably still there. You can find it. It's 5 teams that passed on Jalen Hurts that could use him now. One of them's the Colts, who have started 5 different quarterbacks in the last 5 years. Now you have Matt Ryan, another retread coming in. Not good enough. If they would have taken Jalen Hurts, he's ready to start right now, like a year and a half later after you draft him, or 2 years later while you're learning, maybe even sooner if you're on the Colts. So they took Jonathan Taylor. I get it, but wouldn't you rather have a quarterback than a
Right.
running back? So to me, there's 5 teams that I looked at that could really have used Jalen Hurts at this point, and now they're paying the price, and they're not doing very well.
And the Jalen Hurts to the Steelers, that's kind of sticking in my mind. That's such a good fit
Yeah.
for blue collar, pound the ball kind of city. He would have been really good over there.
Well, I remember on draft night thinking that when it came time for the Steelers to pick, I think it was 49. I'm thinking they should take Jalen Hurts.
Mm,
Roethlisberger's at the end of the line, and
maybe.
it was a top heavy quarterback draft, if you remember. Uh, Justin Herbert was in it. Tua was in it.
Oh, that was the tank for Tua season. Okay.
Yeah, and he went after 3 other guys. So, there was like 5 quarterbacks in that trade. Jordan Love went to the Packers later in the first round. So, like, I'm thinking the Steelers need a quarterback, and he's the best one left. And then there was this long gap between Hurts getting picked and by when the Colts picked Jacob Eason in the 4th round. There was like 120 players taken after Hurts got picked before a quarterback got picked. So I'm thinking the Steelers should take this guy at 49. And they took a receiver. I get it. You want to load up, but you have to have a little foresight as an organization to know, hey, Ben's leaking oil here. He's going to be done sooner rather than later. We need a quarterback that we think can be developed. And by all accounts, Hurts was a hard worker, great work ethic. You knew he was going to put the time in to be a quarterback that's going to be ready to play when his time comes, and they passed on him.
They might have been doing it out of respect for. I don't know if Jalen. I feel like Jalen would have done the same thing that he did to Carson. Kind of his hit, because Ben Roethlisberger is kind of like the opposite in terms of work ethic. I mean, you could tell that the wheels are about to fall off on Ben. And at the end of the road, Ben was pretty awful. I mean,
Yeah.
with all respect to Hall of Fame player, overall, he was awful at the end.
Yep. So, yeah, anyway, I just looked at 5 teams that could have used Hurts, and they passed on him because I know everybody likes to give Howie Roseman a rough ride for some of his misses. So, kind of flip it around a little bit and look at some of the teams that screwed up by not taking Hurts.
Check that out. The Cowboys are saying, Jerry, the Cowboys, same thing,
Yeah.
saying that
The same, yeah.
that Dak might be back. Do you think that that's a mistake, or could they be off and running at 3-1 with bringing back Dak Prescott?
Nah, they'll go back to Dak whenever he's 100%. that maybe what Cooper Rush gives them is that extra week for Dak to be 100% rather than trying to bring him back at 90%. But you're paying Dak all this money. I mean, he's your franchise guy. It's kind of the same. Like, all right, if you pay Jalen Hurts all this money and he gets hurt and Gardner Minshew comes in and wins 3 games, I mean, you're still going to go back to Jalen Hurts. I mean, the Eagles did it last year when Minshew filled in for a game and won the game against the Jets, and everybody's like, hey, well, maybe Minshew should be the guy. But
And Minshew
it's like,
asked to be the guy.
yeah, and Sirhan's like, no, Jalen's our quarterback.
Yep.
He's our starter. He's our number one. And, that's what Dak is. He's the number one. It's not like you don't want to have a quarterback controversy because you're comparing Dak to Cooper Rush. I mean, Dak is the guy. It's nice to know that Cooper can come in and win some games for you if he has to, and he has. But Dak's our guy. We're paying him, a gazillion dollars to be our guy. So he's our guy. That's what you have to say. If you're Mike McCarthy, that's it. End the quarterback controversy. When Dak is ready, Dak is our guy.
And I think as a, just, purely passionately, not dispassionately, as a passionate Eagles, fan perspective, I actually think it's a good thing for the Eagles to have the Cowboys still at 3-1, as opposed to, you have the Cowboys and you have the Giants at 3-1, as opposed to having them be 1-3, and the Eagles can feel that they can rest on their laurels. You lose one game, especially within the division, and you're in second place automatically right now.
Yeah. I mean, it's the only division, the NFC East, with 3 teams with 3 wins. So, is it the best division in football? Maybe. I mean, I don't know. I still think you're waiting for the Giants to fall off. They play the Packers in London this weekend. The Cowboys have to go to, I think they go to L.A., right, to play the Rams. 2 tough games. And the Eagles, go into the desert to play a Cardinals team that has Kyler Murray and certainly capable of beating the Eagles. So, it doesn't get any easier. You're right. You just have to keep winning, and especially within the division. But, the Cowboys, to me, are the biggest threat in the division for the Eagles, even though I know the Giants have 3 wins. But Dak's the guy. If I'm the coach, Dak's my man. I don't care. Thank you, Cooper Rush. Great job. We know you're there when we need you, but Dak's our guy.
Because what are you going to really do? I mean, you're not going to trade Dak, and no. It just you win nothing in the long run by hurting Dak's confidence in himself and right. this team's belief in Dak. They're playing above. Teams always do that. They kind of play above themselves when the backup quarterback is in.
Yep. Right. Everybody thinks the grass is greener on the other side. I mean, I don't know. I haven't seen the Cowboys play much, because I'm usually busy watching the Eagles. I'm at the Eagles games, so I don't get to see the Cowboys or a whole lot of other football other than the Eagles games. But I guess Cooper Rush is doing pretty good, right? I mean, their defense. I think their defense is really good. That's
exactly.
Yeah, they have a good D.
Yeah, so let's pick some of these games for week 5 here. We're already in week 5. Chargers go to the Cleveland Browns.
Chargers
all the way.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, the Browns, boy, they should be 3-1. The Browns could be 4-0 if they don't, cough it up against the Jets, and they probably should have beat who they always do, the Falcons last week. They're Browns. They're the Browns, I guess. They should be 4-0 or 3-1. Chargers aren't playing really well. I mean, they gave up 38 points to the Jaguars, right? They gave up a lot of points to whoever it was they beat this past weekend. I don't remember. I think
the Texans. It was the Texans. They beat the Texans by 3, I think.
Well, I think they gave up like a lot of points. So their defense isn't playing as well as I thought it would. And I think Bosa's hurt now a little bit. Yep. I'm not sure he's back. I know they lost Rashawn Slater on the offensive line, but I'll go Chargers, I guess. I mean, there was a lot of expectations on the Chargers this year, and they're not living up to them. And you hope sooner or later they hit their stride, right? So I think they'll beat the Browns.
What about the Cowboys? You brought it up earlier. Cowboys at Rams.
I'll go Rams. Rams coming off a tough loss to the 49ers. They can't afford to lose, 2 in a row. Defending Super Bowl champs, they have some pride. It'd be interesting if that comes back and they lose. Everybody be like, "Oh my gosh, Cooper Rush would have won that game," but but I just think the Rams. I think the Rams will win. They're a prideful bunch too, like we talked about earlier with some of these other teams. The Steelers, prideful group. I think the Rams are too after winning a Super Bowl. So I think the Rams will win. Bottom line.
I think that's going to be. I don't want to. I don't want to. I'll just say it. I think the Cowboys are going to beat the Rams. I just
Okay.
have a feeling. I
All
just
right.
have a feeling.
When is that game? Is that a night game? Is that the 8 o'clock game? Or
Let's pull this up live for the people. Cowboys, Rams. That is a 4:25 game on Sunday.
same time as the Eagles? So yeah, I won't be able to see that one. But good luck to the Rams and the Cowboys.
Yes. Bengals at Ravens, a divisional game.
Man, another tough one there. Ravens should have won last week against the Bills. I think they've blown 2 17-point leads this year. Harbaugh's kind of probably on the hot seat. I mean, this kind of feels like the end when Andy Reid kind of stunk it up late here in Philadelphia, and people were just tired of Andy Reid, and it was the right move to move on from him. And I know he's doing great in Kansas City, but it could be if the Ravens don't right the ship here. This could be the end of the John Harbaugh era down there in Baltimore. But the Bengals, I think they've won 2 in a row now after losing their first 2.
Yep.
Boy, that's a tough one. It's in Baltimore.
Yeah.
Man, I'm going to go with the Ravens, I think, in that game. I think being at home, tough loss last week, kind of sticking in their craw. I think they'll be ready for this game, and they'll find a way to get it done.
That's what my heart is saying on this one. But I think that my brain is telling me the Bengals go in there and the Bengals beat them by a touchdown or more. I think.
Interesting. Okay.
And that explanation, I'm glad you brought up Harbaugh, who I think is a great coach. Not only just a good coach, a great coach.
Yeah, and a good person too. I mean, he's a good guy by all accounts.
His explanation after the last game when he decided to go for the fourth down, he said he went for it because he believed in his defense, which is kind of weird because then you give your team a lead and then the team has to score a touchdown as opposed to just kicking a field goal. It was really weird what was going on there. So I hadn't taken it the next logical step, but you're right. If they were to just, flame out again, it could be the end.
Maybe it could be long way to go again, but they got to right the ship, right? I mean, we're disagreeing a lot on these games so far. You think the Bengals, I think the Ravens, you think the Cowboys, I think the Rams. What did we say on the Chargers? Who was your pick in that one? Chargers and
I did. Yeah, I think you're right. I think the Chargers beat the Browns. The Browns are sneakily good though.
Yeah.
I just think that they're kind of, screwing things up like that Jets game. There's some losses in the NFL over 16-17 game. You just are going to get some of those games you just don't show up to play. But some teams are just kind of skilled at losing. And that's kind of what we were talking about there with the Ravens.
Yeah.
Blowing these 17-point leads. It's like, this is kind of a talent y'all got here.
Yeah. A very infamous talent. You don't want that talent, man. You want to get rid of that talent.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. So we're good on the Chargers.
Are we good on the finale? What everybody probably listened for is the Eagles at Cards. How are you feeling about the Cardinals and Eagles?
Man. Well, the Eagles aren't going to go 17-0, right?
No, they're not.
No. They're going to lose somewhere. They have the Cowboys next week. That's dangerous. That you have to make sure you're focused on this game if you're the Eagles and not looking ahead to the Week 6 Sunday night matchup here in Philadelphia. And I think the Eagles have some good enough veterans to keep that from happening. Guys that have been down this road before. And I remember when Jalen Hurts went to Arizona in his second start, and man, that was a great game. Him and Murray just went back and forth, but the Eagles eventually ran out of steam.
That was the game where they had the Quez Watkins with the first time he popped on the screen.
Yes.
In a regular season game.
Right. The Eagles are better now. And I'm not sure the Cardinals are better than they were
No.
back then. I mean, they don't have DeAndre Hopkins. I know J.J. Watt, or not J.J. Watt, the other Watt. J.J.?
J.J.
Yeah.
Watt. Yeah, TJ is the Steeler.
T.J.
Yeah.
is the Steelers. Yeah, Jay had the heart issue, but I think he played this past Sunday, right?
Yep.
I don't really have a good feel for this one, but I'll go with the Eagles. I think it's going to be a close game. I think I'll go with the Eagles somewhere like 24-21. Eagles.
I'm with you. I'm more like 27-21, but yeah, I mean, I think I think this is another one that the Eagles fans are going to have to sweat out.
Yeah, and that's okay. I mean, you have to be challenged. You have to, have adversity in these games. You can't win. I know in 2017 they just were blowing teams out, right? They were winning like 55-14 and 42-10, and they were just clobbering teams. So, I don't know. I think that it's good to have a little adversity, and the Jaguars gave them that. The Lions gave them that in the opener, and they overcame it. So, let's see some more, and let's see them overcome again.
Well, if they don't, if they go into the Sunday night game against the Cowboys 5-0, I just don't see the Cowboys being able to come out of Philly with a win, even if it's Dak's first game. I think that you're going to be there. I know for sure it's going to be electric, a great time. So for the Cowboys, better hope that the Eagles lose this week. Maybe be a little demoralized.
Maybe. I think the Eagles might be more dangerous if they lose this weekend coming to Dallas, because they're going into their bye week after the Dallas game. So they're going to be like, you know what? We lost last week. We don't get to play next week. Let's just throw our heart and soul and everything else into this game. So, that's just the way I think. I don't know if they're thinking that, but, I always like teams coming in off a loss, like the Rams and the Cowboys. The Rams coming in off, they're going to be that much more motivated to find a win. And that could be the case if the Eagles were to lose. And they're going to lose somewhere along the line. It's not going to be the end of the world. And I know fans will be, but, it's not the end of the world. They're not going to go 17-0. They're going to lose somewhere. And it could be this weekend. And if they do, I think that makes them better against the Cowboys the following week.
Yeah, you've got to lose. You've got to. You can learn more in losses than you can just steamroll in the league. That 2017 year, getting to the game where Carson gets injured, that's not the expectation. You can't have that.
Yeah.
So. Well, Ed, thanks so much for coming on again. You definitely plugged the article, but is there more stuff? Folks, if they forgot to go and check out the article, tell us about that. What else you working on?
Yeah, thanks, Matt. Yeah, just all my stuff's on a site, with videos and whatnot. And it's si.com/NFL/Eagles. I tweet all my links to Twitter. Zach Ertz talked to us on Monday. I wrote a story about that. I'll probably have another story about that. Jalen Hurts is going to talk to us on Wednesday. Eagles practice is closed. They're doing a walkthrough Wednesday, which is unfortunate. We won't get to see some of these players that were injured. We won't be able to tell if they're practicing or not. But yeah, the injury thing's big. The Eagles signed another kicker to their practice squad, so there's something wrong with Jake Elliott. Clearly, or they wouldn't have done that. That's something that's going to need monitored. So I'll be writing the news stuff, and I'll be throwing in feature stories here and there, and of course, video with all of it. So if you just hit that site, si.com/NFL/Eagles, you find the site.
Do it. And of course, you can follow the show. It's Mention Pod on Twitter and Honorable Mention _podcast. Thank y'all so much for listening. Thank you for coming on again, Ed.
Yeah, my pleasure, Matt. Thank you.
See you.